You walk in tired and hungry, one bad dinner away from losing it. You don't like to cook. You don't want more takeout. You just want something good. That's why there's Dish by Blue Apron. Pre-made meals with at least 20 grams of protein and no artificial flavors or colors. From fridge to fork in 5 minutes or less. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome once again to How We're the Podcast. And in the midst of chasing down Champions League places going into the first international break of the season, as well as breaking all sorts of records for spending big in the summer, we are back with a little change of pace today as we speak to someone who many of you will recognise from stage and screen. Born in South Shields, he's gone on to appear alongside the likes of Denzel Washington, Alec Baldwin, Christian Bale, and Jennifer Love Hewitt, just to name a few. And after we spoke to Vinnie Jones a long time ago, he now becomes the second member we've interviewed from a Law and Order cast on a podcast. And if that's not all, he is, of course, a massive Sunderland fan. Today, we are very privileged to be speaking to Richard Short. Hello, Richard.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. And how are you? Because I know, when we kind of chat on, you're here, there and everywhere.
I am here, there, and everywhere. But just back from Brazil, back from Sao Paulo, and just before that, Switzerland, and before that, Italy. So yeah, all over the place. But you should also announce the full name, which is Richard Ian Porterfield Short. It's a very big distinction for your listeners.
Yes. So, how did that play out? Was it one of them where your dad kind of snuck in and went, right, I'm just scribbling down a couple more names in there?
Yeah, that's he just got that one under the wire. I'm named after him and after my granddad, so I'm Richard III, which isn't good in my line of work. Richard III's a notoriously evil man, but no, it was. I was born in '75, so everyone was still somewhat on a high from 1973, and Mr. Porterfield, Ian, signed my birth certificate. And yeah, I've proudly carried his name with me for my whole life, and yeah, very proud of it.
So what you're saying is there was a spike in the population in Sunderland over the next couple of years after that, after 73, was there?
There was about 9 months after May 73. There was probably there was a surge. The maternity ward was busy.
Yeah, and busy with a middle name like yours, I think. But yeah, who do you reckon's done the most travelling this summer? Do you reckon it's been you or Sunderland's recruitment team?
Oh, well, I haven't been on a private jet, which I'm sure there's been some private jet action in and out of Newcastle Airport. That's, I guess, we'll stipulate. But I know that's a bone of contention for certain people in the Northeast. It's really important to them. Yeah, no, I think probably Sunderland's recruitment team. I can't keep up. I mean, we're talking not long after deadline day, and I was even waking up this morning. I'm 7 hours behind you here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I live now. And I had to check this morning because when I went to bed, Brobby, I wasn't sure if he was confirmed. We had Bertrand Traore was news to me over my coffee this morning. Pleasant news. I'll take them all. Bring them on, get them in. But yeah, it's been absolutely mad, and it's been fun. It's really exciting, and it's a wonderful time to be a Sunderland fan, and it really is very exciting.
That's it. We tried to keep up with it as it was going on, and I think in the end I described it as historic, because I really genuinely do think in 20 years' time, I think we'll still be talking about this summer.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, look, I want any and all of the new lads in to prove themselves to be the new whoever, the new superstar. I don't care which of them it is. I don't care if it's Talbi, Siddiqui, Granit. I don't care if it's Bertrand Traore. I don't care which of them it is. Whichever one pops up and becomes the new, best player in the world, Ballon d'Or contender, I'll take it. But it's up to them now, because there's competition for spots. Competition for the old lads, the Ballards, the Humes, and all that lot, and yeah, I think competition's healthy, And it's up to them all now to see, right, well, I'm worth a spot in the team and I'm worth a Premier League place. And,
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, clearly.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll circle back to Sunderland in the modern day, but I want to talk more about you at the moment. But just quickly, I mean, before we talk about kind of your career and everything, talking about it in football terms, I mean, obviously with a name like that, I imagine that was just it. You were stamped as being a Sunderland fan, and that was it. You had no choice like the rest of us.
Yeah, I was enrolled in the official supporters club on October the 16th, 1975, when I was 8 days old. So I think at the time I was the youngest. I don't know if I still hold that record. I'm happy if someone else has taken it now. If some 7-day-old, 1-week-old kid's taken it, picked it off me. Good luck to them. Yeah, so I didn't have a choice, and then my dad used to take me first off to the Boca End with his little homemade wooden seat that would hang on the bar over the dugout, the trench thing at the front behind the goal, and then gravitated after the parents got divorced, gravitated over to the fully end with my mum behind the goal, and then you get to a certain age and you tell her to stand a bit further back, move up, leave me on my own, and then it's, you don't need to come with me anymore. I can get the bus from South Shields on my own. I'm old enough and big enough. And then it's, you start gravitating up the stand yourself, don't you? And happy days. I miss them.
Yeah, brilliant. We talk about that progression around the ground, and we've got a guy called Kelvin on this week, and he talks about the old lads section in the Roker End back in the day. But and some of the things they used to get into in there, which some of them we haven't been able to put in our podcast, actually, funnily enough. but yeah, I mean, as we said, kind of raised in South Shields, and I was kind of doing some background reading, and I saw that you played the Earl of Northumberland in the tragedy of Macbeth, which I imagine kind of strengthened ties. But we saw some quotes, and these ones were in the Shields Gazette from a good few years ago, and I'll just quickly read them because actually it got to me because I'm an exile. You said, I'm proud to come from South Shields. I'm proud of my family still there, proud of Savoy dips from Dixon's, of magnificent curries from Ocean Road, the Lifeboat, the Fair, Fisherman's Bay, Marsden Rock. I'm proud of the betting shops my granddad lived his life in, proud to finish the Great North Run, Tyne Dock, Mariners Park, of the warm-hearted people in a cold, windswept environment. I mean, I have to admit my concentration slipped after Savoy dips because I miss them more than pretty much anything, but you clearly love your links with the area that you were originally born in.
Absolutely. I'm strongly proud, deeply proud of where I'm from. I was up there, it wasn't so long ago, actually. I was just seeing my nana, who's still hanging on, bless her, in Horsley Hill. And obviously swung by the stadium. It was the off season, so there wasn't anything going on, but I still got to just stop by and, have a little touch of the wall, just say hello to it. Pop in the shop across the street and just, I'm very proud of it. And it's funny because you mentioned you're an exile too. There's nothing quite as patriotic as an exile, as an immigrant. I think you strengthen your ties to your homeland the further you are away from it, and spend your life convincing. I just had a bunch of people in Brazil watching the opening match of the season, the West Ham match. Yeah, everyone's sitting around Sunderland shirts, screaming for Sunderland. I'm just sort of trying to win minds and influence people across the world that they're missing out on the greatest family, the greatest club in the world. And so far, it's working. I think I've convinced a few.
Well, you mentioned you're in New Mexico, but actually we're the favourite team in the country of Mexico now, aren't we? Apparently, the whole country are following us.
Apparently so. I mean, well, of course, Sunderland were here pre-season, last season. It was they came over when Pierre Equa got a belter of a goal here on the baseball field, the minor league baseball field, Isotopes Park against New Mexico United. I have no idea why on earth they were here, other than to make it easy for me for one match. It's saved me 20-hour journey. That's what it usually is. But I was delighted to see them and delighted to hang out with a few of them afterwards as well. You just mentioned the Shields Gazette. You were quoting from there from a while ago. I was in the Shields Gazette. My first brush with fame was sitting on Stan Cummins' lap in the Shields Gazette when I don't know how old I was, but probably Cummins, I must have been 5, 6 years old, maybe. Was that maybe 1981 around there or something? And sitting on the front page, I don't know what it was, some sort of open day at Rugger Park or something. But yeah, I was there. Cummins on his lap, very proud. I wish I still had that picture. Great. It'd be in a frame on my wall now if I had them. But yeah.
Well, I was going to ask who your first kind of heroes were. You mentioned Stan Cummins. I imagine he was not around. Gary Rowell, maybe, or was it slightly later?
No, Raoul, definitely. I mean, you know what? There was Mum took me once, Full Members Cup. We got because it was my birthday week, and we went to, I think it was Grimsby, so we got a seat, and it was the first time I'd sat. We were at the clock stand, and I'd never. It felt very posh to be sitting in a seat, you know. I've since gone on to sit next to the owners at the stadium. I like. Do you know what I mean? The world is it's a funny journey, and actually I've enjoyed each and every one of them in their own way, and I reminisce about both clearly. But and they announced my name at half time, and said happy birthday to Richard Short and whatever. Yeah, and probably 6, 7 years old. I felt dead famous then as well because everyone around me was saying happy birthday, lad, happy birthday, son. And that team was. Who was in there? Dave Swindlehurst. I used to love Swindlehurst. The Mullet, Hodgson, Swindlehurst. Who else was in there? Eric Gates, obviously. Gates, Gabbiadini were you know, forget it. I mean, Chris Turner was probably still in goal then, I think. Was Turner still in goal then? Yeah, probably was. Was there an overlap there? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, if it goes into Gabbiadini, you're talking Hesford or someone like that. Or
yeah,
that's left in 85, didn't he?
I think, but what I think, I mean, obviously Gates and Gabbiadini, for me, yeah, Dave Swindlehurst was a real, it was the name, it was the look, it was the, you know, there was just something, they all had untucked shirts then as well. Do you know what I mean? Short shorts and untucked shirts, and everyone was muddy all the time. No one's muddy anymore. No,
yeah.
How did they stay clean? I don't understand. They get the occasional bit of white from the touchline, but no one gets muddy.
Or black and blue, because I was thinking about Billy Whitehurst around that time as well.
That's true, yeah, black and blue.
It was a character, but yeah, you don't get the characters anymore. Never mind the mud. You're just talking about players, you know, used to, you know, probably have a fag at half time and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that sort of afterwards. Yeah,
but I was going to ask for that birthday message. Did it show? Was it the time probably before the scoreboard clapped out at Roker? Was your name flashing up on the old scoreboard?
No, it was no names on the
right.
Just an announcement.
They used to do them because until they did the attack, and then it just broke down for years, didn't it? It never worked for donkey's years at the end. But
how exciting was it though? Quick, where you looked at your program at half time to find out the other halftime scores, and they'd stick the 0 and the 1 and the 2 on the thing. It was the most thrilling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And we were talking a while back about this, that must have been one of the best jobs at Roker Park. You watch the match, and all you needed to do was a little wireless, find out the halftime scores, and stick the numbers up.
I'd do it now. I'd do it for free.
Should bring that board back. But yeah, look, let's get into your career, because we'll circle back to the football.
Sure.
Because look, you know that. You know, we need to get into your career. And look, we talked about there's a few years between us, even though you look 20 years younger, I might add. But when I was starting school back in the early 90s, I remember, you know, you're talking about drama lessons and school productions and all this sort of stuff. And the Northeast back then, it actually took some guts as a lad at the time to kind of do that sort of thing and be driven enough and have that kind of self-confidence to get involved in those school productions and do those things. Because, look, let's put it lightly, you'd have taken some stick back in the day, if, you know, with the school I went to and all that. And you moved away at a point where, do you think that potentially going to a different part of the country at that time actually helped you and created more pathways than if you stayed in the Northeast?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'd moved out of the Northeast, not of my own volition. I'd moved because I was young and because parents did that, right? I didn't really have any say in the matter. It was getting a car. We're off to London. That's it. But no, I mean, look, you're absolutely right. At that time, there was little opportunity for anyone. It wasn't necessarily just my line of work. You know what I mean? It was Thatcher. It was all that kind of stuff, and it wasn't a great time. But sometimes out of adversity comes the best, most interesting people and opportunities, right? And I firmly believe that's what happened in the northeast of England. It definitely hardened me in the right way. I've since softened those edges intentionally as well, because I think that was the part to go on as well.
Mm.
But no, there was. Of course, I got laughed at. I did the school plays. I did the local amateur dramatic stuff when I went down to the south, and but I kind of liken it a bit to Billy Elliot, when because he wanted to be a ballet dancer, and as his dad said, lads do boxing or football, they don't do ballet. And it was kind of the same thing. You want to be an actor, but I'll be honest with you, mate. Even in the south, and for many years after that, in fact, until I had a strong CV behind me and said, okay, he can do this. He's not going to wet the bed here. I, for many years in the UK in general, I was
Mm.
told, "Oh, you want to be an actor, do you?" And it sort of you give you a little pat on the head and send you on your merry way, sort of, and people wouldn't take it seriously, and they sort of. I got a few plays, did some West End stuff in England, but then I'd never gone on camera. No one ever let me in to go on camera, on TV or film in the UK at all, which is why I worked really substantially with some of the greatest directors in the world recently, and still in England, I'd say almost entirely unknown, unless you happen to have watched one of the shows I've been on or whatever. But I'm okay with that because I'm doing okay over here in America. But it's a strange thing that it took me to come to the States actually, to where they said, "What do you want to do as an actor?" Well, then here's a script, have a go, and it was just purely based on merit. And there was
Mm.
still, that was 2004. I moved over 21 years ago, and there was still an element, and I believe there still is, still an element of sort of a land of opportunity in some sort of corny way, like it because they didn't know I was from the northeast. They didn't know I'm not meant to, they thought I was posh because I was English. And I
Mm.
tried to explain I'm from Horsley Hill, and no, I'm really not posh. I'm really not.
Yeah.
But oh, you're English. You should be in a costume drama like Hugh Grant. I'm like, there's different kinds of Englishmen, but but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So it took, although I do play a lot of baddies, so that's but it took a sort of transatlantic journey, I think, to really kick things off for me, because no one could hold any bias, any sense of class, or anything at all, or any sense of what I'd achieved in my past, not achieved. And it
Mm.
was just, are you good enough? Can you play? It's almost like a game of footy, right? It just put the ball on the spot and said, well, let's have a go. If you're good enough, you're in the 11. And touch wood, it's been good enough so far.
Yeah. Do you think that in the UK, do you think that obviously we go backwards, back in the day, kind of 30 years ago or whatever, that kind of class system and that, if you like, well, call a spade, slight snobbery towards maybe people from the northeast or the north in general. Do you think that still exists in the UK in, let's say, the industry that you're in? Or do you think actually sometimes, because obviously if you look at the BBC, that kind of regional accents, you hear that a lot more than you certainly used to. But do you think that still exists?
I do a little, yes, unfortunately, yeah. It's getting better. It's getting better, and all the different groups, the sort of marginalized groups that we've had over the decades, or over centuries, I guess, but over recent years, are somewhat having their day, which is great, right? And it's a bit of a leveling out process that we're in. Women were maligned. There's never any decent roles for them. Different ethnicities, different sexualities, genders, all this stuff. It was just, and everything has been sort of leveling out a little bit, and I think class is still the last one in England that no one really pays much attention to. I really do believe that, but I think but rather than sit in a corner and moan about it, the answer is for us to create stuff about. I mean, I'm working on a series right now, writing a series right now set in the Northeast, and so far so good. And there'll be a lot of Sunderland in it. Let me tell you. There'll be a lot of the other lot in it too, unfortunately. But yeah, but you have to, I suppose, for balance. But yeah, you've got to try and navigate a way around it, because no one else is going to, and until there's a Geordie or a Macron prime minister, which I can't see happening in Egypt. Although we do have a deputy, which is from the north, and we're getting closer. But until someone sounds like us, it's not really gonna. It's not gonna. No one's gonna gift it to you. No one's gonna gift it to you anyway. So it's just a matter of finding out how to tackle each problem. I do think we're in a time, at least, where all these things can be tackled. It just takes a few of us together to sort of have a think about it and do it. But yeah, I mean, look, I'll give you a quick example, right? I was working on a TV show for a few years in Canada, and one of the day players, so one of the actress, came in, young Canadian lass, and she was clearly very good. She only had a couple of lines, but you could just tell this lass had something. I stayed in touch with her. I said, "Yep, of course, here you go, whatever." And she said, she got in touch with me a couple of years ago and said, "Oh, I had an audition for RADA, which is, as you may or may not know, the big posh one, Laurence Olivier, Kenneth Branagh, all that stuff, Royal Academy Dramatic Arts in London." And she got in, and it didn't surprise me at all because she was good enough. She said, "Now the problem is they've said they've given her the bill, how much it's going to cost for her to join." And she said, "I can't do that. I live with my grandmother." And that RADA's response, I shouldn't be saying this, but whatever. RADA's response was to say, "Well, could you, I don't know, can you find the money? Could you remortgage? Could you something?" And I'm like, so not only has the girl got to be good enough to climb that huge hurdle of getting in past an audition, it's then a financial constraint, which she couldn't go. I actually gave her the details of what's it called, the television second, I forget it now. It's in Nottingham. A lot of good people are coming out there. Shane Meadows set it up. Like there are places, you've just got to find them, and someone like Shane Meadows has done it. And or find the odd theatre, find the odd place, because people will look out for you if you're good enough and you've got something. Just keep going. And she has. I think she's now a series regular of her own. She's got big telly shows of herself, so good for her. But yeah, it's the obstacles can be almost insurmountable, but that's the same for everyone in a lot of line of work. So you just got to keep going, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's the institutions that are missing out if they're going to make decisions like that. But you did mention in your early days, you mentioned kind of being on stage. You were toured the country parts in Greece, Macbeth, Real Monty. And I've kind of been reading around this in terms of actors where sometimes, and I suppose it depends what people want to do, but it sometimes sounds like they're a little bit confused as to what they want to be, where some consider themselves to be stage or theatrical actors who accidentally go into TV or do it for necessity or whatever. And some say, well, I'm a film TV actor who gets a part on stage. I mean, do you think there's quite a distinction with that? And do you think actors purposely prefer one route or the other?
I think a lot of actors do have a preference. Yeah. I don't. I like the discipline of the shortened time discipline of a film, because I can really knock myself out. I can get fat, get thin, learn my words, have no sleep, get cold, get hot, whatever it takes, because you do get pushed physically, mentally when you shoot these things. Truthfully, in fact, a lot of people aren't quite aware of how much it can take a toll. You've got to be in shape. You've got to be ready in many ways. I can do that for a month, 2 months, 3 months for a film, knowing there's an end. But it's very difficult to do that on an open-ended thing like a TV series. It's a different discipline. I've had to learn it, where you're getting scripts every night when you get home at midnight, and then you've got 2 hours to sit in your kitchen with a cup of coffee and try and learn your words for the next morning for 5 a.m. pickup. And that's going on for 6 months, and it's really tough. Whereas the theatre, I've just come up 130 odd shows in a row on Broadway for Sam Mendes, a wonderful play, Hills of California. Jez Butterworth written play, and I'm very proud and happy to be a part of that company. But it's just such a different discipline to wake up every day, to have your day free, where you're not going to work till sort of 6, 7 o'clock. You're getting home late. So you can't just nip off to the pub for a couple of jars watching the match. You can't, because you've still got to go to work. You could do that after work, but you can't do it. So you've got to. It's all self-discipline. You got that, and just different strokes for different folks, I suppose. Different people have different preferences. But I think I did get asked a lot when I first came to the States: "Are you a television actor? Are you a theatre actor? Are you a film actor?" I'm like, "Listen, I'm from the Northeast. I'll take whatever I can get." I'm just someone that's happy to have a job. That's still true to this day. Just give us a job. That's it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Did they almost, you're talking about pigeonholing, but almost being British, was it, oh, well, you must be a theatrical stage actor because you're British, or was there that element?
Yeah, yeah, that's very true actually. I think that there's a sort of built-in reverence in some sort of way that Americans know and understand that most Brits have done theatre, whereas that's not necessarily true over here. And I think that's a good thing. That's because it does proves your credentials a little more. If you can do it in
Yeah.
front of 2,000 people every night and not flub your lines, then you must be worth your salt, basically.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, you've been out in the States for 20 years, and like I said, from those early kind of stage parts, you went into TV film parts, like we said, Law and Order. You're in films like Delirious with Steve Buscemi. Later, you've done, I think it was Jack Ryan fairly recently, but you've had all these constant parts, and you kind of touched on it earlier in terms of moving out to the States. I mean, even from those, do you think that, is it an abundance of parts maybe in the States that is the difference, that you kind of, you made that move and you were getting those parts? Or do you think you might have done that in the UK even if you'd stayed here? Because one thing I see, and you might be able to say I'm completely wrong on this, but sometimes in the UK you see a lot of almost people on the rounds. Like you almost, well, when my folks used to watch them back in the day, you almost saw the same actors do about 5 different kind of, whether it was dramas or series or, soaps or anything like that. They always used to do the same things on the TV.
I still think that's true. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a smaller circle in the UK, obviously, just because of the geography of it all. The economics of it all is smaller too. Obviously, you can come over here and do one and live off it for a few years, and in England, that's just not true. But it's a smaller, tighter circle. If you're not allowed in, it can be tough to break in there, and that's okay because it is what it is. But I still think everyone. I've got so many friends that are just hopping from show to show over there, but they've got to because of the economics. They've got to do 3 to what to everyone over here. So, but yeah, I mean, how many times? I mean, I love these actors, but how many times do you see David Tennant? How many times do you see Danny Dyer? Do you know what I mean? They're on absolutely everything. And actually, it's proven good in Danny Dyer's case because he's stretched himself recently. He saw a different side to him on Rivals of late. So that's great. But most of the time, they're just being pigeonholed and playing the exact same thing on different shows. So yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing. But the business has changed where a lot of US productions are now shooting in Europe and shooting in the UK. We're actually starting to shoot more in mainland Europe, I guess, because of the last few years and stuff. But look, I mean, Sunderland specifically is intentionally aiming to bring some of those massive productions with Crownwork Studios, right? And I know it's a shaky time and an unsure time right now, economically, globally. But so I know an investor pulled out or something, but now they've still got the government's backing there. They're aiming. It's having that intent. It's having that thought in your mind or in the minds of the lads at Footy 73 that are setting it up there, or one of the main people setting it up there. That they have this ambition, they have this hope. They're saying, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we can bring Oppenheimer or Barbie. We can shoot Mission Impossible in Sunderland, just 5 minutes away from the stadium. And we're like, of course we can. And of course they can. They absolutely can. And they will. They will. It will happen. I'm fairly certain about that. I've seen all the plans, and it looks absolutely phenomenal what they're going to do there. So that'll be massive Hollywood productions shooting on the River Wear, which will be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'll look forward to Tom Cruise abseiling down the Stadium of Light in Mission Impossible 20 in about 10 years.
you know what's going to happen. He'll be 90 and he'll be doing it.
Oh, you wouldn't put it past him, really, would you? But
no, you wouldn't.
But just, I mean, you mentioned though that kind of the line of jobs that I suppose actors are, again, the economics and necessity. But do you get to a point, and it seems I was reading the things that you've done and that you're going into, you're writing, you're producing. Do you almost get to a point when you've been doing all these jobs and maybe you've got maybe a lack of choice to start with, you're trying to get parts, you're trying to get known, and then suddenly you hit a point where things open up and you're able to actually then, dictate your own path and choose that you want to write this or that I can turn that down because actually there's a more interesting project here?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah. You get the freedom of choice, and you just you're looking for a new challenge all the time, right? Because you want to stretch yourself. You want to play for a better team or whatever the analogy might be. For you want to play for a Champions League club. But you, yeah, the writing, honestly, I've been doing it for a while now, but a lot of actors I've found that haven't done it before, I've been doing it in the last 5, 6 years. A, because of the lockdown, and people were saying, well, why don't I use my time to sort of productively? Because they're artists, these people, they're creative people. They can sit down with a guitar, write a song, or write a script, or do whatever they got to do. Cook a new meal, build a building, whatever it is, their creative outlet, and that's great. Everyone has that. Every human being has it, I think. But then after that, we also had a writer's strike and an actor's strike. We had a lot about AI interference into our line of work and stuff. So we've had lots of pauses that we didn't necessarily want. So people were using the time constructively and realizing that you shouldn't sit and wait for the phone to ring. Because that's another thing. I mentioned self-discipline earlier. You realize that you don't work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You can work with the greatest director on the planet, and the phone might not ring for 6 months. Now, once you make your peace with that, once you've been in the game long enough, you know there's always another one coming, and there's always something bubbling up, something brewing, and it becomes fine. You just have to fill your time and in the right sort of way, right? But before that, you panic when you're younger. So then that gives you a sort of freedom when you make your peace with that, with the schedule or lack of schedule of it all, that you start to say, no, just be comfortable. If you want to put the match on at noon because I'm 7 hours ahead, then watch it and then get back to work and do what you're doing and fill your time well and you know what I mean? Like you get comfortable and don't just run off and try and do 3 lines on another Law and Order, because that was great at the start, but it's not enough now. I'm just not interested because there's no point. It doesn't move the dial anymore.
Yeah, that's it. And well, look, I mentioned up front, how, the type of people you've worked with, and I suffer from being slightly overawed when I speak to people like yourself, and even especially people like Paul Bracewell and Dennis Smith. When I speak to them, it's kind of wow, these are exactly. But I mentioned some of those huge stars that you've worked alongside, but I've also read some quotes from you and I've seen a couple of interviews with you where you've just said, okay, well, I'm working with these people. You recognize them, you recognize the work they've done. But then you get in a room, you have one conversation and you go, oh, yeah, actually, you remember that they're just people.
Absolutely. I mean, Sam Mendes, for one, I'd show up for rehearsal in various Sunderland shirts, obviously. And he'd do his best Sunderland accent. Sunderland? He'd do that. He's an Arsenal man, as is Jez, the playwright. And I worked with Ian Rickson, who's a wonderful director on Broadway, but 14 years ago in Jerusalem. He's a Charlton Athletic fan. And actually, football is, for me, obviously a common sort of common ground for people. And it is little things like that where you realize, oh, you're just doing a job like me. And you're hoping Charlton win on Saturday, and I'm hoping Sunderland win on Saturday, and whatever. It's absolutely. There's no, what it is. Actors, it's still. I mean, footballers is way more exciting to me, obviously, because I've met many famous actors or whatever. But the first time you meet the big famous ones, the big global megastar ones, of course, you're familiar with them. You know their face, you've heard their voice your entire life. And you're nervous. You're nervous before any job, whether the actor opposite you is famous or not. It's day one in a new job, and you're anxious. And then you learn that by day two, you'll be absolutely fine. You'll crack on. Probably because the big global megastar has flubbed a line or something. The world didn't cave in. Nobody got fired. They just said, "Oh, let's roll again. Let's go," or whatever. Even on stage, I've been opposite people where something's happened or they've just had a little moment, and it usually happens after you've done 100 shows perfectly, and then suddenly your mind wanders off to who's going to fill in at left back now that Sirkin's not in or whatever it is. What am I doing? There's 2,500 people watching right now. I'm worried about the match tomorrow. But you realize that, okay, if she can flub that line and nobody cares, then what's the worst thing that can happen here? The same thing could happen to me, and everyone will be fine. And I did a thing. I was entirely cut out of it. Did a film with Ewan McGregor once, and the film changed title about 4 times. I knew it was going to be cut out. It was a pointless, weird, comedic set of scenes that was just me and Ewan for a couple of days shooting in New York. And my first night, I was called to set at about 7 p.m. It was a night shoot. I didn't get to set until about 5 a.m. So I'm sitting in a little happy wagon, which is a very small trailer on the streets in Midtown Manhattan, trying to stay awake. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Slapping myself, standing outside in the freezing cold until a PA comes over with the headset and says, "Mr. Short, let's go." And then all of a sudden, you're standing with Ewan McGregor doing a scene. And you're like, oh, God, I can't even stay awake. And then the first take I did, I couldn't remember a thing. I don't mind saying this. And then Ewan just said, he took the script, and it was like at a hotel reception. So he took it, he hid it behind the desk, and he went, "Just put it there, mate. It's all right. It's all good. Let's have a look. If you need it, let's have a look." And you know what? But because he put it there, didn't need to look at it ever again. There was some weird safety blanket thing that I knew that was around and available. And it was just a little thing that Ewan was ahead of me at that point, a lot more experience, still is, but a lot more experience, and just said, "It's all right, mate. It's fine. Just stick that there. You'll be absolutely fine. I don't give a shit. You don't care, you know." Yeah. So you just learn from people, and hopefully people learn from you as well. You know, that's all it is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like we said, but you've done many, many different hats on. You've done many different projects. Have you got a particular favourite in terms, from an artistic point of view, that you went, this was the one that I really got my teeth into?
I'm enjoying being a writer and a producer because I read a play, two of us, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and had Barry Slipper and Jake Johnson perform at Watford and Manchester just last year. I was doing the Broadway one, so I couldn't do it, but we're looking to bring that. We're imminently going to announce bringing it to the US, which is great. Brilliant. Some wonderful theatre, and that hopefully will be myself and Barry playing. I'll be playing McCartney, and they'll be playing John Lennon. So that'll be fun. Remember, we wrote the play as well, so I'm very proud of that, because to get something off the ground in the current climate in the theatre was really tough, especially independently, and it did really well, sold out. So very proud of that. So proud in general of writing. As an actor, I'd say a lot of it's on stage, because you get a full night, you get a start, middle, and end. But I'd say the series Mary Kills People, only because it got nominated for stuff, and there was a lot of eyes on it. Did 3 seasons, and it rounded out as myself and the character of Mary played the assisted suicide doctors for people that wanted to end their life and were sick. Terminally ill people, and that's, if people get a chance to and haven't watched it, I would highly recommend that one. It's 3 series of 6 episodes per season. It was a beautiful production in Canada. It was shown in 100 and how many countries around the world, and did really, really well. And now as a producer, I'm actually an investor in Evita, the one at the Palladium right now, with Rachel Zegler, where she comes outside and does the whole thing at Carnaby Street or whatever every night. And seeing that on opening night was astonishing. It's been a tremendous smash hit. It really has, like, one of the biggest seen in years. So that's fun, and that's just part of, like we said before, right? The growth of spending time in the industry and putting different hats on and staying in the game in various guises, and having a little more control of saying things as well. That's quite nice. But yeah, I've still got so many ambitions and aims that there's still so many parts to play, parts to write. But one of my main ones is to get the local story out there, get our story, get the Northeast story out there a bit more, because I still think there's not been enough. Liverpool's had Boys and the Black stuff. Nottingham's had all the This Is England and all that kind of stuff. Manchester's had plenty. Manchester's had Coronation Street for 200 years. But you know what I mean? London's had plenty, but I still don't think there's been enough, other than Our Friends in the North, which is probably the last really tremendously great one I can remember. I think there needs to be more stories told from our part of the world. Yeah. And the talent's there for sure.
Yeah, and it seems over the last 12 to 24 months, just because I'm living in Sheffield, I know the BBC, and I think there was another one, they've done a few dramas set in Sheffield, Sheffield seems to have been on the agenda over the last year or two. So I think it's about time it moved slightly further north. I think you're probably right. But just bringing it back to the two of us, because actually I was fascinated in that because I'd rather not say how many times I've watched Get Back, because I just find that sort of stuff fascinating. But
it's incredible.
I don't think you're ever going to see an artist do his work like you do when Paul McCartney writes Get Back.
Get Back. When he's just plowing in the bay.
The way he's looking for it. The way he's just looking for it, and he keeps stopping and then starting again, and the way he finds it. That is like a painter, the strokes of a brush, or watching somebody paint a picture.
Putting his brush up, and before you know it, the Mona Lisa's there. It's
absolutely
watching art come out of the ether. And if it wasn't pre-planned, there's no, I've got a set of lyrics, let's try and put it to music. Incredible.
He's sitting bored having a cup of tea, and he's producing art, basically. I just find all of that just absolutely incredible. So, but the two of us, that stage show you said you co-wrote was that story about their last meeting. And I've done a lot of reading about that, and I was just wondering from that point of view, again, because I'm slightly nerdy in terms of that. But what sources did you kind of take from because obviously you've got some pointers here and there that people have hinted at, but there must have been a lot of filler that maybe you've taken from other conversations that they had from time to time.
Yeah, well, first off, my colleague, my business partner Barry Sloan, was an actor, writer in England. He approached me and said, because we were writing something else, he said, well, there was an old VH1 MTV type TV movie of two of us. And so we reached out to the writer of that, Mark Stanfield, and said, look, we want to make a play of this. But it needs to say something else in 2025, like something now. And to us, the story was that these two northern men were clearly better together, clearly wanted to say, I love you, mate, to each other, and never could, because which two northern men in the 1970s were going to say, I love you? It's just not going to say that. They probably still wouldn't. Well, I don't know. Maybe they would now. And that's our hope, to maybe tell northern men that, yeah, you can say that. And just to realize I'm better with you. And thank you for being a part of my life. And I created more and better with you. And that's what we thought it was. What was unsaid is what should be being said, basically. And so obviously you don't know what goes on within the walls of the Dakota building in John's apartment, which interestingly, as our play was opening in Watford, and I'm talking to Sam Mendes because he's got 4 Beatles films coming out, and Jez is writing one of them, and they've just been to the Dakota that day. And I was like, that's my set. That's our beautiful set. But so that's how we started, by approaching Mark and involving Mark in the process. But then I've got every book, every vinyl record, there's a wonderful set of specifically that time period, the McCartney Legacy books. I don't know if you're onto those, like Cousin and Sinclair, I think are their names, don't know their first names. But Volume 2 came out, but that runs from breakup with the Beatles. It's going to run. I think Volume 3 is going to come out next year. There's another book about McCartney Wings era coming out very soon, which I can't wait to read too. There's so much material out there, man. It's obviously a sort of time of, nostalgia always sort of looks back 25 years or so, apparently, and there seems to be something in the zeitgeist where we're looking at that, especially with Get Back, and then with Sam's 4 films, and it's been my life's work to obsess over McCartney and hopefully one day play him. And I was about to, and then got a different job. So still very much pushing that. And it was Barry's life's work to play John, and he named his child Lennon. So we were the right people to do it. But we also connected with other people that knew parts of that inner circle as well, that helped us tremendously, that were friends with that people in that world, which was really great, because then we could legitimize it all. And and we had a wonderful supportive theatre at the Watford Palace who wanted to produce new work. Steve Mamamian, the artistic director over there, invested in us to launch it and take it to home theatre in Manchester. And who knows, we might go back there at some point. But next up, like I said, is bring it to the US and all that. Yeah.
Brilliant. I hope that takes off over there. I just read some recent stuff about what you've been up to. I saw Mysterious Ways, which was described as it was about a homosexual vicar at war with the Anglican hierarchy, and I read that. But have you had any other recent projects? Can we expect you in anything that's coming out fairly soon?
Yeah. What's coming out fairly soon? What can I talk about? It's weird. It's like, do you know what I mean? Like it's. I mean, I'm off to LA this week, meeting with Netflix about some stuff. That's all I guess I should say. I can say, but I'm also seeing Oasis while I'm there. I can't say that at the Rose Bowl because I've not caught up with that yet. So yeah, look forward to that. And yeah, Mysterious Ways there was a beautiful script that came my way a long time ago, and it just took them, as every independent film, took them a decade to get the pieces together, get the money together. And it's a controversial subject, a religious man wanting to marry his male partner, especially in that part of the world, the Pacific Islander. He's Samoan, the guy that played my partner, Nick Afoa, wonderful actor, and actually was a former New Zealand All Black as a youth.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah, strapping lad. That's
yeah. Imagine.
I was terrified on day one. I learned to love him. No, he's a good lad. He's a good man now. But that actually ended up airing in Australia and New Zealand, like on their equivalent at BBC One on Good Friday primetime, 9 p.m.
Wow.
Which was just wonderful for that sort of film and sort of story to play on such a weekend like that. And I was exec producer on that one, so it was nice to start that journey as well. And yeah, very proud of it. But it's funny because I've made films that still haven't come out and may or may not imminently, and some of them take forever, some don't, and it just is what it is, It's like I don't know. I mean, even going back to two of us again, we've got someone ready to make that into a film out of the UK actually, and that sounds really exciting. We just have to wait for basically underlying rights are with Paramount, and they've been going through a corporate merger acquisition, and that's delayed things for at least a year or two already. So all this extra stuff, you're like, maybe, yeah, no, maybe. It's like moving pieces constantly, but stay in the game, mate. Stay in the game and keep many irons in the fire, and it's all good. It's all good.
Well, just a very last question on the industry before we pivot back to the football. Because you mentioned them. Yeah, you mentioned Netflix, and throughout your career, you've clearly seen that kind of that change of direction between the networks and the streaming organizations, if you like. So how has that completely changed the industry over the last, well, let's say 10, 15 years, if not more?
Well, for us, it used to be concentrated to, you'd go out to America, you'd go to LA around February time for pilot season. You'd be in a rental car or whatever, because it was pre-Uber and stuff, obviously. And you'd run around 10 different auditions in a day, getting the script on the way. So you're just reading. You can't do any more than that, obviously, in that short space of time. And it was all condensed to try and get a pilot and then you'd make a pilot, or you'd test for a pilot where there's like two of you left, and you'd both sign 7 years of paperwork that would change your life. And they're like, oh, forget that. Let's just try and do your last audition and not worry about the contract you've just signed that says you'll be on a billboard in Times Square and a millionaire by the time you're 22. Just ignore that. Don't get nervous. It's impossible to ignore that. But anyway, that side of things has pretty much fallen away. Now it's it's not so much condensed into one period of time like a February. Now I'll go to LA. I was just out there for a round of meetings. You go to Amazon, you go to Apple, and now Netflix is. You go to these places, but they're much more swish. I will say their headquarters are very nice. There's always nice complimentary valet and fancy waters and all that kind of stuff, and it feels kind of like you're in the Death Star or something, a friendly Death Star. So yeah, and there's a lot more people walking around with iPads and what have you. So yeah, but apparently that's where we make stuff now.
Yeah,
it's wild.
I'm going to look for coffee machines now in the background when I'm watching the old Star Wars movies, just to see if there's any in the background.
Seriously.
But let's pivot to the football modern day, because I think we're just kind of staggered, I think. And we've kind of chatted a little bit before we recorded, and you are lucky enough to have the odd conversation with David Bruce, who has done an unbelievable job in kind of reconnecting the club with the fans. But I mean, just the journey we've been on. I mean, we've kind of been chatting for last 12 months on and off, and let's just say that last 12 months, where we came from, what the feeling was. We had that Newcastle game where there was feelings around that. We had the end to that season, and to do what they've done, and just for a starting point, get the club in the Premier League and reconnected with the fans. Just that was incredible, just on its own.
Just a bit. I mean, full disclosure, David Bruce is a friend of mine. And was before he was at the club. We played football for a team in Brooklyn about 20 odd years ago when I first come over, but before he was working for the MLS, Major League Soccer and stuff. And then I invited David along once or twice. I had a weekly game at Rod Stewart's house up in Beverly Hills, and I'd throw him a spare Sunderland shirt. So there'd be two Sunderland lads playing with all these other famous actors and rock stars, and there'd be me and Dave Bruce. And then, cut to, we were at a match in the States once, and he says, I've just had a word from Sunderland, Sunderland AFC, and his wife was there, and he said, I'm so excited, I just want to tell you this. I said, to do it, run home, you've got to go home. And he said, that's how I feel. I've got to give something back to home, and because he was doing very well over here. Yeah. He took MLS with the Apple deal, Messi coming over. He was instrumental in a lot of that stuff. So he did such a great job and left it to come home to our club, to our family, because he knew he had to. And my word, like you said, I think right now, every single thing the club is doing seems to be, even when they put a foot wrong, when they did the paint work in the away end, do you remember that? Was it last season, the season before? Came out, hands up, all right, we messed up there. Shouldn't have done that one. We'll slap a bit of red paint on and that's gone. Dave has been, I'm tremendously proud of him as a mate and tremendously proud of him as what he is at the club and the club. Everything. I mean, look, being a Sunderland fan right now is incredibly exciting. I saw him, I took my sister along to the playoff final, obviously. I had to come over about a couple of weeks before it, and I didn't want to leave. I was on a flight, and Mayanda got the goal at the Ryco Arena, in the first leg against Cobb. And I screamed, and I was watching on my phone. A bunch of people behind me were all laughing, so I had to explain. Someone shouting on a plane is not de rigueur anymore. And then the second leg, big Dan Ballard moment, a magical moment. I was in Rome with my wife, and I think I woke up half the city of Rome. And then I said, right, well, I've got to stay in Italy now because I'm not going back to America. I was going to hang out in Europe, wait for the final. So I did. I stayed in Florence and Bologna for a bit, did some writing, did some working, and then came over for the playoff final. Took my sister, obviously saw Dave, was there for possibly one of the greatest days of my life, the greatest day of all of our lives, because the way that match panned out, the crowd, every single element of being member of Sunderland Football Club was just, it was immense that day. It really, really was. And it's led to everything since as well. I mean, and then I ended up having a few drinks afterwards with some of the lads, which was nice, in a very swanky place. And my sister was complaining that she was underdressed. And come on, Richard, I said, everyone's underdressed. We've all got Sunderland shirts on. Come on. And having a chat with Dan Ballard after. Oh, I mean, just I see. I can sit there with your Denzels and your Clooney's and your Adam Sandlers and Meryl Streeps and whatever, but give me a pint and let me talk to Dan Ballard. I mean, I'll say this: I went to relieve myself at in the men's room that night for a moment because we'd had a few, And I looked to my right, and you don't normally instigate conversation, do you, in the men's room? You sort of do your business and get out. It's an unwritten rule, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
we'll talk afterwards. Yeah, just go do your business. And then I looked to my right, and there's one man talking my ear off, and he's definitely had a few jars. And I'm like, that's it, mate. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, happy days. It's Dad Neil. It's the captain of Sunderland. It's another South Shields lad. So of course, all right, stand here and talk. Yeah, I'll not shake your hand just yet, but I'll. It was magical. I mean, look, your listeners can't see, but I just got this on an island in Brazil.
Oh,
Do you see
brilliant.
that?
121, just
What?
59.
It was that
Brilliant.
or Tommy Watson's face. So I went for the numbers instead. But
Yeah.
that's what that day and that moment meant to me. It meant to everyone else. A tremendous turnaround, and it seems to have led into everything over the summer. The kits, the way the stadium's looking now, the signings, the general feel of the whole. I mean, look, you'll be able to tell me better, but it seems from a distance that even the city itself, there's something that's great about winning. It seems to make you feel that anything is possible because it is, and the city is absolutely blossoming. I mean, really, you tell me because I know
Yeah.
the bridge is open now, and
Yeah. We've done recent podcasts with Sunderland councillors. We've done a recent podcast with the Vice Chancellor of Sunderland University, and they're all just saying that the city's bubbling. They can feel it. Everyone can feel it, and because of that, there's this. And it sounds strange, but it has a knock-on effect because people are then going out to enjoy themselves more because they're generally happier. That means businesses are thriving, new restaurants are thriving, bars are thriving. The new place that's opened up, the kind of the stable place. I'm trying to think what it.
Sheepfolds.
Yes, that's it. The name, I lost the name for a second, but Sheepfolds, that's all doing well because, as I said, people are just out and they want to be out and about because of the mood of the city. And it's a strange thing when the club, because we have got this relationship, probably an unhealthy relationship with the club in some ways, but when the club is down, you feel it in and around the city, and you look around the city and things might be closing and the city just feels like it's going in the wrong direction. Everything's on the up. And I was going to, because again, putting a lot of down to David Bruce, because look, you can get it right on the pitch, but if the club wasn't right off the pitch in terms of looking after its fans, because people have looked at Sunderland and thought it's been a toxic atmosphere for a long time, but that's because it's a two-way thing between club and fans. Now, if the club then makes sure that the fans can see them looking after them, and that's not just on the pitch, that's not buying the best players, or which we'll might get onto in a second, but the off the field thing in terms of ticketing, in terms of looking after the OAPs, where they've said over 80-year-olds, I think, can have a free season ticket. All these tiny little things add up to this good feeling around the city and the club. And as I say, you know David Bruce much better than I do, but as being a fan, he just went straight into there and tapped into all of that.
Look, David Bruce was always the right man for that job. The right man, a proper local man. Not saying you have to be local, of course. I mean, look, Christian Speakman's doing a great job. Tyrrell's doing a great job. They're not local whatsoever. But but I think they saw that they needed someone like Dave just right there. I mean, look, Dave was mates with Proctor before that, and he still sat there on the bench. There's a sort of interlinking of, but it's also very English and not just a Northeast thing that, over the last few decades, we've seen the death of the high street, and not just in Sunderland, we've seen it all over the place. I've been shocked sometimes when I've come to smaller towns and cities in England and seen, okay, there's a charity shop, there's a betting shop, there's something else, and that's it. Everything else is boarded up. And I don't like to see it. Nobody does. And that's because of the big box and the online and all these kind of stuff. It's becoming like America, And yet, look what a football club can do. Everything you've just said about it sort of bleeds in. You and I briefly discussed before we started the conversation here that with the kits looking good, the team seems to play better because they look more handsome. They just look better. They look sharper. Everyone's a movie star now. Like that bleeds into the fans that are sitting there having a lovely, brick oven pizza and a craft pint in a glorious area. Is the sun shining more? I don't know, but it feels like it is. Do you know what I mean? It's it's really so, but that can embolden a whole area, and that's it's beyond the politics. It's beyond who's in charge of the council, of the town hall or whatever. Having the right man in the right job, someone like David Sunderland, and having the club just evolving in the way it's evolving, it's really quite incredible. And it is a very English thing, and it shows why these clubs are, like you said, maybe it's an unhealthy obsession or relationship with the club, but I don't know. I think we're just seeing quite how important it is to people that the club is being given a global platform. There's eyes that the rest of the world is seeing what's happening there, and how special a place it can be.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
do.
And I'm glad you mentioned Michael Proctor, because Michael Proctor left the year before I started Monk Weymouth, and David Bruce he was in his last year when I started Monk Weymouth School. So two lads from Monk Weymouth School. So I just wanted to stick that out there. But let's go on to the football and what we've done on the pitch, because we can't really would need to talk about that. And I don't know if you had any inside information, but all of us have just been staggered how much they've just gone for it and said, this is our opportunity. I mean, I don't know if it surprised you, that we've broken records. I think we've gone with about around the 170 million mark, which beat the record of Nottingham Forest back in 2020, 142 million for a newly promoted side, which is just incredible. And we're now saying, we said on a pod that a couple of days ago that essentially spending that much, if we still go down because we've given ourselves such a good chance and spend that much money, you're wondering if the Premier League might just say, well, let's just make it a closed shop, because what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, look, the finances in football are absolutely mind-blowing and probably wrong, right? They're probably unhealthy. Sunderland aren't setting that tone. They're just playing the game now because we're in the big leagues. You have to. We had to build a squad fit for that level of the game. We had to. I mean, I do worry that there's not a place in the side for. I mean, you look at someone like Lugo 9. He's the fabric of the club. I'd say he's the heart and soul of the club, Luke. Right? And now I'm concerned: how's he going to fit in? How many games is he going to get in? I mean, honestly, Big Dan Ballard, who can get in any lineup, as far as I'm concerned. I'm also looking at the last couple of games and saying, well, to me, Mukiele is one of the signings of the summer. I think he's going to be incredible. Already hasn't put a foot wrong. He looks immense. Suddenly you're looking like, well, how's Dan going to get back in the side? You just don't know. But again, I suppose that's a good thing. The competition, that's obviously what Monsieur Lebris wants. He wants people fighting each other for the spots. But the finance of it, the prices, they're ridiculous. I want to acknowledge that. I don't think it's healthy. Money can definitely be spent better elsewhere in the world than on a football pitch, on a football team, especially people that are going to sit on the bench. But then you look at it and you say, well, for all we've spent, it still gets you one Geordie striker. You know what I mean? It with add-ons. So as much as we're spending, Liverpool are spending 4 times that, and they've already won the league. They're just keep continuing. That's just evolution, not revolution. Whereas it's more of a revolution at Sunderland. I mean, it's hard to keep up a little this summer to say, right, who are the 11 lads I'm meant to love and cheer for? Because now there's 30 of them, and I don't know. I've got connections with Sturkin and Neil and Ballard and Try and Wilson, and so it's lovely when the likes of Eliza or Wilson are coming on and scoring in the Premier League. It sort of it makes it a bit more special, like seeing what Isidore did the other day against Brentford. From Jack's ball, lovely, but it was nice. It was touching to see what it meant to Wilson Isidore, and yet Wilson Isidore isn't local. Given the opportunity, he'd move to Real Madrid. Of course he would. Anyone would. He'd have to. His wife would kill him if he didn't. You know what I mean? He's got a new child to support. But it's been a cracking week for the lad anyway. But I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with the numbers because, as you mentioned, there might come a time where this becomes a bit boom and bust. And I don't just mean for Sunderland. I mean for football in general. And I know we've got the whole parliamentary thing coming in with the Football Regulation Board, and the money involved is not healthy. It's not right. Where does it stop? Although saying that, I'm looking at the likes of baseball over here and the LA Dodgers. They sign people on a contract for $1 billion. Like a 10-year contract for $1 billion. So maybe there's still a long way to go. Yeah, I thought these days were done after COVID and people like Neymar moving for 200 million. It seemed to settle down a bit, and we started to get realistic. But I don't think Sunderland had any choice. And I still think, as much as Sunderland, they got a lot of eyeballs on them because we're the new Nottingham Forest doing this. You still look across at someone like Burnley, and they spent almost as much. They actually bought, I think, more players, number of players. I think Burnley have bought 14, 15 before deadline day. I don't know what happened yesterday because I was busy keeping up to date with Sunderland. I don't really watch who Burnley was signed. I do know they signed a lad from Benfica, but I don't know if he's any good. But everyone else has done the same. That we're just the story right now because everyone's impressed that we're giving it a real go. And I got to tell you, mate, who knows? We've had a nice start, but I feel pretty good about things. Certainly as far as staying up. I think we have every chance. We really do.
Yeah. Well, I still think it's going to be a battle, but I was just going to ask you about those first 3 games because when we looked at the fixture list, we thought, there was some raised eyebrows thinking, actually, if we speak very quietly, there's a chance of picking up a few points potentially at the beginning of the season. But all 3 games have actually been very close and have gone on big moments. And, even between, after spending all that money, and it's interesting that those players are, all of those new players, there was only a couple who survived from last season, as I've said. And, that they're still getting used to each other, the way they play, the different kind of, how do you pass to somebody, which foot do you pass to that person, and how far in front of that person do you pass that? And we're still picking up the points, but those games have been very tight until there's been those big moments that have gone our way. And you just feel that we almost still, even though that we think we've spent all this money, we've got the Granit Xhakas of the world, which we might come on to quickly, but we're still getting those moments right and we've picked those points up, but it just feels like it's still going to be a long, hard season ahead.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. But listen, would we have it any other way? We're Sunderland AFC. I think, we're still doing it on pure emotion and magical moments and passion, and we're obviously clearly relying on the 12th man a lot on the Stadium of Light. But I don't know if we were ever going to do it any other way. I think if we had Real Madrid's lineup in red and white stripes, I think we'd still probably do it that way. It's going to be miserable. I was watching the Brentford match this weekend. And for an hour of it, I said, why do I watch this? I'm physically shaking. I can't do this 38 times in a season. I can't. It's not good for my health. It's not good for anyone's health. And yet, there I am at the sort of 94th minute saying, look at us till the end. And we did it. And I think we'll do enough, but I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that's just who Sunderland are. It's in our DNA. We're going to rely on them because we are such a deeply, deeply supportive, passionate club across the board, on the terraces, on the field. And I think the lads, the new lads that are signing, are seeing that right away. I mean, I was reading, was it Brian Brobby saying this morning, saying he'd spoken to Mukiele because he knew him. Where did he know him from? Was it Leipzig? He knew him from somewhere like that?
Yeah, and he knew him from Leipzig, and Mukiele signed because he spoke to Xhaka, who he played with. I think they played together, and so it's all kind of interlinked that people have talked to each other and told.
And it means someone that's in
good
Sunderland already is saying, "Oh, get your stuff here. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun, especially when we win games right at the end." You know what I mean? It was a similar shape. I think the Brentford match was 0-0 at half time, right? It was pretty similar to the West Ham match.
Yeah.
And
close.
Obviously slightly different second half. But listen, I would take half time 0-0 in every match this season. I really would. I'd probably take 0-0 at full time every match this season, to be honest with you, because that would be enough to stay up now. So when it's at 0-0 at half time and we're saying, is the shape right? What's the personnel and all this stuff? Like you said, everyone's still learning each other. I'm very happy. We're in the game. We're playing. We're involved. We're there. We're not just being brushed aside, and we will be brushed aside. I'm terrified for to go away, play the likes of Haaland and all these guys. They're gonna murder us at some point. My playwright mate Barry, he said, right, what did he say? December the 6th or something, we're away at Anfield. He's like, get yourself here. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, that's the one I'm not going to go. I'm not going to wait at Anfield.
Yeah.
I'm like, it'll be painful. It'll be horrible. But then I guess if we go into it with that and we get a point somewhere unexpectedly. But I'm telling you now, I'm already seeing from this lot, I'm learning from this lot that anything is possible. And I know I'm filled with early season optimism, post deadline day enthusiasm because someone are putting their hand in their pocket and getting the drinks in. I love it. But there is a reality in that. There's a truth in that, mate. That we're competing, and I think I'll say I also think Leeds United might stay up. I actually thought about even before we signed him, but Sunderland and Leeds, two big proper clubs, proper fan bases. They've got themselves back at last. As I think both deserve and might stay up there. I think the Premier League's a better place for them.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah, we've got 35 cup finals ahead of us essentially, and actually you mentioned December. Looking at the fixture list, I don't think we're going to get a point in December.
Well, we will because the derby's in December, isn't it?
Oh yeah, is that December? Is it? Well, we've basically got
December
13th. I think we've got 5 really tough games in December. I think it's like Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool.
Horrible. No, it's going to be a miserable Christmas. Just switch off until the new year.
Yeah.
But hopefully we've got 20 points in the bank by then, and we can ignore it. But no, the derby's on, so that's 3, obviously. So we'll be all right there. We're out of one of the cups already, so we can rest play. God. Did you watch the Huddersfield game? Did you watch the cup match?
No, I didn't. I was abroad and I didn't get a chance to watch it. So I just kept checking in. I heard about Jensen Seal's penalty, and that was about it. But
lucky you.
Have you got plans to get over? Have you got like one earmark to say I'm getting back for that one?
I've got non-earmarks because I've got stuff going on over here, but of course, there's plans to get over. I'm going to see someone in the Premier League, of course, and then next season I'll be earmarking my trips to Europe as well. So, is that getting ahead of myself?
Yeah. Well, those glamour ties in Lithuania and Latvia exactly. And Estonia, Riga. I can't wait. Yeah.
That's it. Vilnius FC.
I'll tell you, I've just been to Vilnius a few weeks ago. It's a lovely place, actually.
Okay. I've heard good
stunning place. Really stunning place, actually. It really surprised us, but I'd recommend it. But just wait until the lads get drawn against them, and then go. Then.
Well, can I ask you quickly the last minute signings that any of us have yet to had time to even consider? The 3 that came in on deadline day. I mean, I've got an opinion on Richard Ian. I've seen him play for the Netherlands. I've seen him live, and I'm very impressed. I think that's great. And Brian Brobby, I've only seen on television, but I've seen a few times, and I reckon he's something that was missing. That stocky strength, pacey. Yeah. I think that's something else. But Traore absolutely came out of nowhere, and I'm not sure. He's the winger, right? Is he?
Yeah.
He's an option on wide. Okay.
Yeah. And essentially, I think Roberts went out and Traore came in for $2.5 million. I think he's just more pacey than Roberts. I think Roberts is slightly more technical, but I would argue Traore's got the. And I think that's what Labrie wants. He wants pace. He wants to hit teams on the break, and he wants legs. And I think he's got Xhaka identified to play behind the 4 pacey ones, and that's how he wants to play it, I think.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a wealth of talent now to call on. It's just up to Reggie to figure out who the best 11 are. I can't wait to see a couple more of the other lads back in, like Dennis. I'm a big fan of his. I'd love to see him back fighting for a spot.
There's potentially 2 ahead of him now, isn't there? Masuaku and Ronaldo. And Ronaldo looks some player.
He looks all right. I remember he had one little slot the other day, just a brief one, but that's going to happen to everyone, especially the pace that the Premier League's played at. But he looks a cracking player. Masuaku's a seasoned pro. But listen, this is the big time. Look what's happened at Manchester City. Trafford is going to be England's number 1. Manchester City's number 1. Almost £30 million move, and now he's going to be on the bench. Yeah. It's just now he's got to fight for his spot.
Yeah, and that's the other one as well. You're talking about Gertrude, who brought in as fullback, and we just think that's a shoe in for Trey Hume. and he hasn't come to sit on the bench. And the other thing is in goal. I think we were all surprised actually when we all went out, when Sunderland went all out for a goalkeeper, and Robin Roofs looks like an absolute bargain if you look at some of the goalkeepers that have been transferred in the summer.
You know what? My passion and relationship with Patterson was such that I hated Roofs just for signing, because I said that's not fair. Patterson's got us there. This lad's he's a cracking goalkeeper, Patterson. He really is, and a good lad, I think. But and I wanted him to have his shot. Roofs comes in like, that's not fair. Now I love Roofs just as much. He's been wonderful. He's been really one of the best keepers in the Premier League already so far. He really has. So we'll see, and it's just we wanted to be at the top, and that's where we are. And it's a little ruthless, and as we discussed the money, it might be a bit unhealthy, but we're just playing the game like everyone else. And as long as we stay the right side of the line on all that sort of nonsense, we're just in it to win it, and we're in it to stay in it. Let's say that. Well, I don't know if we're in it to win it, but we're in it to finish second.
Give us a few years, we'll see where we are.
Tell you what. Yeah. Just finish as long as we finish above that lot down the road, which I shouldn't say that. That's ridiculous, but I think I've always thought Newcastle and Aston Villa would be the two that have worse seasons than last. This was before Isak happened, and just saw a natural drop off, and Newcastle struggling to spend money and all that. And I mean, not that I want to spend any time on a Sunderland podcast talking about them, obviously, but so far that's proven to be the case. They've not won a match yet, and Villa look to be struggling. I think Harvey Elliott's a good signing, but they're not quite the same. So then you're looking at, well, if the likes of Sunderland and the Leeds are going to fight to stay up, that means someone else is going down, and you just never know. We stuff West Ham, but then they stuff Forest, and that's the league we're in,
Yeah, well, full stop. It's a more interesting Premier League than it was, well, it has been for the last couple of years. I think at top and bottom, I think we're actually going to have some drama this year, which has been missing. But hopefully it won't be too long before you get back and see the lads in the flesh in the Premier League.
I'll get back to the fans museum as well. I love it.
Absolutely.
What a lovely spot that is. I had Porterfield's jacket on once. His cup final jacket. That was a special day to put that on.
You could just argue it's your name and just walk out in it, couldn't you?
Yeah, it's mine. It belongs to me. It's priceless, but it belongs to me. I'll tell you quick before we wrap up the David Bruce story. He set up that last season it was I think we were playing with Watford, and it was my birthday, and I was headed up to see Aberdeen HJK Helsinki the next day just for fun because I was over and just driving around. Why not? And Aberdeen's obviously the Ian Porterfield link, go up to Pataudry. And so after the match, we'd beaten Watford 2-0, I think, and went and had a pint with everyone. It was the night that lot up the road were beating PSG in the Champions League. And I said, don't worry about it. They'll beat them, but they'll still manage to, fluff it up. And they did, obviously. Years of experience tells you that. And let me say the same, I'm sure. And watching it with Christian and Dave and all these guys, and just thinking, how am I here? I'm very aware of pinching myself, saying this is ridiculous, and not feeling like you belong. And Jimmy Monty comes in, and he's there. He hands me a pint, and we're chatting, and just the last thing he said, other than happy birthday, was like, enjoy Aberdeen, Porterfield. And I just thought, Jimmy Montgomery just called me Porterfield and told me lots of stories about him, obviously. But he had a pint with me and said, enjoy Aberdeen, Porterfield. And that's probably the best birthday I've had. You know what I mean? And that was thanks to Dave Bruce, put me in that room, put me in that spot and introducing me to Jimmy. And it's just, well, I'm just talking about that. Honestly, I really could. I'm deeply appreciative.
Brilliant.
I really am. Yeah,
and everything you hear about Jimmy Montgomery as a fella. I mean, I've only been in his company, but never had a conversation. But everything you hear about him, he's just an absolute gentleman from everybody you speak to who's met him. So quite. And again, that's another thing David Bruce did, named the stand after him, which he kind of orchestrated and initiated that, which is about time we did something with the stands like that, and brilliant for Jimmy Montgomery, and it was fantastic to see him on the pitch. Get that as well.
Yeah, Yeah, well deserved. He was a gentleman, and I think a lot of the people back there are. Mr. Murray is a gentleman. I think Kirill and Christian in my well, I've had a few chats actually, but somewhat limited interactions seem like younger gentlemen. But that's the kind of club we appear to be, and if we keep on that track, if we stay that way, as fans as well, then we will continue to win the hearts and minds and win new support around the world, because we definitely are at the minute, just from what's going on. And I'm so happy and so proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a brilliant place to end on. And also, I realise we've taken up far too much of your time. So it just leaves me to say it's been an absolute pleasure, Richard. And we wish you kind of all the best with everything you've got going on at the minute.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. You too. And I'll bear that, lads.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And then keep in touch, and hopefully you get over for that game and give us a shout.
Certainly will, of course, and I'll be listening in the meantime. Every episode, which is thrice daily, it seems.
Yes, and on to that. Thank you for everyone for listening. We're going to be here all throughout the international window. There's going to be all sorts on the Roker Report website, and of course we'll be with you every single day on How We're the Podcast, whether it's interviews like these, or we'll go back and do the On This Weeks, which are usually out every Monday, so you'll hear those. We'll have more reaction. We're going to try and get some journalists to tell us all about these players we've signed and give us the ins and outs of potentially some gossip we've heard on the socials and all of that, and whether they can play on the right or kick with the left and all of that. So we'll get all the details on all of that. So look out for all of those podcasts that should be dropping over the international break. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.